Welcome to Secondary Transition Assessment for Students with Disabilities. Secondary Transition Assessment for Students with Disabilities is the foundational component of the Secondary Transition Plan. Without a solid, robust Secondary Transition Assessment process, the Secondary Transition Plan is not complete, since the plan would not reflect the student's strengths, preferences, interests, and needs relative to the pursuit of future endeavors in adult life. The ultimate goal of secondary transition assessments for students with disabilities is to help develop a well-rounded view of who they are and their goals for their future roles. The success and robustness of the secondary transition assessment process depends mostly on the student's own perspectives. As we continue through this module, consider how assessment supports the process to prepare students with disabilities for adult life. Think of the process of preparing students with disabilities for the transition to adult living like building a house. There are a lot of materials and processes that need to come together for success. The process is most effective when you have the right tools, plans, and expertise available. The Secondary Transition Plan is the cornerstone of the Individualized Education Program, or IEP, for youth with disabilities. Just as the cornerstone is the final piece of a building's foundation, the Secondary Transition Plan is the foundation for the process of building and implementing the IEP. A meaningful secondary transition IEP serves as the cornerstone of the secondary transition process and is the foundation of a student's post-school success. Utah's reflective framework for IEP development explains secondary transition as a pathway to success and not just one point in time. It is an ongoing process of assessing strengths and needs that will eventually lead to successful transition to post-secondary settings. The IEP and the Secondary Transition Plan are married. A secondary transition plan should drive the rest of the IEP. It is not an addendum to the IEP or just a form to be completed. The student is the architect behind their plan. As we said earlier, the quality of assessment relies heavily on the student's perspectives. Consequently, the quality of the plan itself relies heavily on these student perspectives. Helping students understand their strengths, preferences, interests, and needs, or SPINs, is critical to setting post-secondary goals and then identifying services needed to meet those goals. Let's walk through the process of planning for success in post-secondary settings with assessment as the foundation for our build. The pieces of the Secondary Transition Plan can be compared to the materials needed in a building project. The Secondary Transition Plan is that vision for the student's future after high school. The student and their team need to know where they're going before an appropriate plan can be developed. The post-secondary goals are specific targets set by or with the student that they are working toward for after they exit high school. Robust secondary transition assessment to get to know the student's SPINs is a critical process to inform these goals. Once the vision is determined, then the team identifies the tools or secondary transition services needed to help the student realize their vision. Secondary transition services are the things that the community of adults in the student's life are going to do or offer to support the student in reaching their post-secondary goals. Secondary transition services are the heart of the IEP for transition. We know what some of the best tools are in our toolbox. Predictors of post-school success are in-school experiences like programs, skill development, and activities that help prepare students for further education, employment, and independent living in adult life. The predictors increase the likelihood of improved outcomes, but do not guarantee these outcomes. The predictors of post-school success are a great place to go when considering secondary transition services. The highlighted predictors are the biggest bang for the buck. They are research-based as predictors of positive outcomes in at least education and employment. Career and Technical Education, or CTE, currently has the strongest level of research behind it as a predictor of post-school success in further education and training and employment. Other powerful predictors include inclusion in general education, paid employment and work experiences, high parent expectations, and student skills in self-advocacy and self-determination. Consider your own transition from school to adult life. What experiences from this list were influential in your success as a young adult? Consider if the students you are supporting have these same opportunities. The blueprint for the vision includes mapping out the course of study for each student to prepare them to accomplish their post-secondary goals. The course of study should include classes needed for graduation across multiple years, as well as classes that relate directly to the student's post-secondary goals, such as electives or career and technical education pathways. The building blocks that support the student's plan for transition to post-secondary settings are the annual IEP goals that align with their vision. These are short-term goals to be accomplished during the current IEP year to work toward the long-term post-secondary goals. As we stated at the beginning, throughout the entire secondary transition process, the student's voice and participation are essential to success. Although the student should drive the process and the decision-making, the perspectives from several stakeholders are valuable. Think of the team as the group of subcontractors used to build a house. Different perspectives and expertise needed to develop and implement the plan successfully. Some team members are required, but the student should have input on additional team members they feel would be helpful to them in the process. Collaborating with and connecting students to other service providers that can support them during their transition to adulthood is ideal. Although the student ought to drive the process, the student's vision alone is not enough. They need a crew to help them reach their end goals. Input and support from different team members, including outside agencies, are needed. When developing a plan for transition to post-secondary settings with a student, it is important to think beyond compliance. Consider asking yourself these questions. What is my role in the secondary transition process? How do the services or supports that I help provide impact the future of my students or youth in education training, employment, and independent living? What actionable things can I do to help prepare youth for their future? How can I support youth in ways that empower them to reach for the stars and achieve their dreams? The Transition to Post-Secondary Settings flowchart outlines the secondary transition process for students with disabilities. As we look at the flowchart, we are reminded that when engaging in secondary transition planning with our students, we should keep the beginning and the end in mind. We start with the intention of meaningfully engaging students in the process with secondary transition assessment as the foundation. Then, as we work through the process, we focus on doing what is needed to support our students in achieving their desired post-school outcomes.